Hasn't the reaction to the coalition victory been extraordinary to watch?
Tonight, Scott Morrison's moment. The coalition celebrates the win that few saw coming.
When Juanita says few people saw it coming, she means no one at the ABC or elsewhere in the love media saw it coming. It seems all the journalists and commentators who were barracking for Labor's climate policies or tax, spending, health and republic policies, or had declared the coalition's leadership change was a disaster, it seems all of them could only see our looming Labor triumph.
So tell us, we've asked everybody else for a prediction, how they think things are going to pan out tonight. What are you thinking?
I saw that. I'm not as confident as Mr 86 seats over here.
I said 80, just to be clear. 86. You're trying to verbal me already, we've just started.
I heard 86. Did you hear 86?
I heard 86.
I heard 86. Everybody heard 86.
Everyone heard 86.
I heard 80 because I like to be.
I'm not nearly that confident, but I'm expecting it to fall around 81 or something. I'm basing that on things I've heard from people who should know, that there's kind of a baseline, I think, for Labor of about 77, 78, and then there's a bunch of seats that are in doubt, and even if most of them break the coalition's way, you end up at a low 80s sort of a figure.
Well, just to remind you, the coalition looks like winning a majority with 77 seats, leaving Labor in opposition on 68, one less than it took into the election. But let's get back to those predictions.
You talk about whether the polls are trustworthy. There's been a couple of failures in the Trump election and Brexit, but they're pretty good in Australia. Look, the overnight tracking that I've been given on both sides, going back though to Wednesday, suggests that the Labor Party could get to that magic number 76 relatively comfortably and quite quickly, and then there are about 12 or 14 seats that I understand is separated by about 1%. The coalition seems to be in front in the majority of those, but Labor would only need to win a handful of those contests, and the result could be something like, the head count, something, or the vote count, something like Labor in the 80s and the coalition in the 60s. And I think that explains why the mood that I detected in the camps tonight, in the Labor camp, the professionals were still cautiously optimistic. The looser ones were barely containing their excitement. On the other hand, I would describe the mood in the Liberal Party as still hoping for the best and maybe privately fearing the worst.
The thing is that at the ABC and elsewhere, they'd been sneering at the government for a long, long while and predicting a big defeat, especially after the overthrow of Malcolm Turnbull and the emergence of Scott Morrison last year. It didn't seem like they wanted the new Prime Minister to succeed.
This is a man in a hurry. That's what this is about.
Too much of a hurry for a bus.
Big hurry. Look, 8 coalition-held marginal seats. This is a place that matters. This is where the Liberals think the election will be won or lost. More likely lost if you look at current polling. But the Prime Minister is in a rush to introduce himself to people. He's on a campaign to let people know who he is. I mean, he's
just an ordinary bloke.
This is an ordinary guy letting you know who he is. I think he is in a rush, although many of his colleagues were concerned that this was too much, that he looked like an opposition leader, he looked desperate, that it's looking too frenetic, too kind of me, notice me, and that he's not using the benefit of incumbency. A couple of MPs have told me, you know, he would be useful. Sure, he needs to do some work in the community and get around to the marginals. Everyone accepts that. But let's use the benefit of incumbency to look like you're a Prime Minister. Let's calm the tone. Let's look like you're the boring guy who's capable of actually running the joint.
And when Turnbull quit and the Liberals lost the Wentworth by-election, leading ABC political host Fran Kelly even burst into song.
We tried to win with Sharma, but Karen Phelps gained too much ground. Now we know the price of karma. If only Malcolm hung around. On the outside, the neg was gone. Religious freedom's locked away. That doctor, she's a local, independent Jewish gay.
All a bit of a laugh, isn't it, when the coalition loses a seat and goes into minority? But we've heard nothing but dirges since Saturday night on the ABC. The tone at the national broadcaster has been almost funereal.
So, time to bring in the panel now. Nikki Sava, David Crowe and Patricia Carvelis. And, well, it seems everybody accepts it was a miracle, which means nobody saw it coming.
Now, the polls leading up to the election had the gap narrowing. Most of them had the polling at 49-51 in Labor's favour, on a knife edge, in other words, and well within the polling's margin of error. Yet we saw these bold predictions of an ALP victory. And, of course, in the supposedly learned halls of academia, it was also seen as being the time for Labor.
Labor will win this election. I think that's virtually unquestionable. We're just not seeing enough movement, even in the polls at this point at the primary vote level, to see the Libs or the Coalition hang on. So I think this is going to be a Labor victory.
Even with news polls saying it's tightening as the voting day draws closer?
Yeah, look, you have to look again at that primary vote figure. And earlier in April, we saw exactly the same primary vote polling as we saw on the weekend. So there hasn't really been a discernible shift. You need to see a gap open up, to the degree of around about 5 or 6 points for the Coalition to even look like hanging on.
Psephologist Malcolm McKerris wrote in the Herald Sun that Labor would win 83 seats and a sizable majority, and many others in print got it wrong too. Catherine Murphy at The Guardian had Liberals even in safe seats under threat as voters lined up to kick them. At The Age, Benjamin Priest was writing about a record majority, and in the Sydney Morning Herald, Sean Kelly said this was an election bid the Liberal government was not going to get away with. When the impertinent voters eventually had their say and so many in the media had got it so wrong, they all knew who to blame.
It's a terrible result for Labor, probably because the polls were predicting a Labor win.
It's a bit of a spectacular failure of opinion polling.
Should anyone trust an opinion poll ever again?
This is a shambles when it comes to the opinion polling.
This has been the greatest information fail in many, many years.
Arthur, if news poll is so ropey, is it time you guys stop sacking your leaders based on it?
Well, we've changed the rules.
Something's happening here, and I think I know what it is.
It is, so far, an extraordinary result for the Coalition.
They have the scent of victory in their nostrils.
Now, the strange thing is that other people reading the same polls and thinking about the state-by-state spread and the issues and how voters might view massive new tax grabs and an uncosted climate plan, well, strangely enough, those people were always able to see the government was in with a chance.
Shorten is going into Labor seats. Now, you and I have conducted these campaigns. You don't see your leader going into your own seats in the last couple of days. They're always heading into seats that they're wanting to win. Bill Shorten's heading to seats that he's trying to hang on to.
It really is a series of by-elections around the country. This doesn't feel like a national campaign in the sense that there's a national swing on. I go back to previous elections. You can feel the swing in 07. I could feel the swing coming in late in 2004. I remember well the swing in 2001. It's not like that now. This will go down to the wire in all of these seats that you've picked out.
I love these moments because we can replay this in about 9 months, and as usual, Troy will be wrong, Rowan will be right. This is the classic. Mark my words. Virtually everything Troy Bramston just said is incorrect. You are wrong. The Liberals are going to win the next election. Labor are not cruising to victory. Labor are cruising to defeat.
The majority of commentators will tell you a Shorten victory is a certainty next weekend. But it's not.
There is a possibility the Coalition could win with a primary vote as low as 40. The Coalition needs to pick up at least 4 seats, and it already looks likely that they'll be able to pick up seats in New South Wales, Queensland, the Northern Territory and Tasmania. But, of course, they could also lose other seats in Queensland and New South Wales and perhaps elsewhere. The election could well come down to how many electorates the Coalition loses in the one state of Victoria.
Now, what does this all remind me of? The inevitability, do not bother going to the polls, do not vote, this election has already been decided. If only there was a recent example of the media picking a winner before the pesky people get a chance. If only there was an example, say, from the United States just 2 years ago, where, as you can see, or rather 3 years ago, 99% chance of Hillary winning.
As a certain Prime Minister might say, how good is Sky News? Now, you might say there's a bit of we told you so in this, and you bet there is. But we weren't the only ones. On election eve, my colleague Dennis Shanahan, the political editor at The Australian, wrote that the polls had had it too close to call for weeks, and pundits were wrongly predicting a Labor walkover when it was always going to come down to individual marginal seat battles. So, importantly, what does all this tell us about the ABC and other journalists? We pay the public broadcasters $1.5 billion a year. They employ thousands of people, including Anthony Green, and none of them could pick it? Are they really giving you analysis or telling you what they hope will happen? Are they really commentators or green left barrackers? They like to say that the open, honest, diverse and heartfelt opinions you get on this station amount to some kind of partisan bias. Kind of funny, isn't it? Call it bias, perspective, open commitment to mainstream values, call it what you like. But viewers on this station and readers of sensible newspapers certainly had a much better idea of what was going on in this election than ABC viewers.